Okay, hello again. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
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 Hi, Nini, can you hear me?
Yes, David, but probably you can't hear us. I'll text you. I'll text him.
I'm really sorry about this, guys. I'm just having a small problem. I can't hear anything. So 1 minute. Okay, guys. Well, let's get started. I've been asked today to talk to you all about leadership and public speaking. Does that make sense to you all? Is that what you're expecting to hear? Okay. We actually have quite a lot of time. So I'd like to make this a little bit interactive. I don't want to stop every few minutes to ask someone a question, but if you do have questions, please just put up your hand. I'm sure someone will connect you. If we could just start, maybe one person, the bravest person, the natural leader, would give me some idea of what you think leadership means. Does anyone want to have a go at that? Anybody want to try that one? Come on, guys. There's a lot of young people here. All right, you go. You go.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think leadership is?
Okay, I think that leadership for me is mostly about not being afraid to share your ideas with other people.
Okay, so you're
Makes sense.
what you say here, which is interesting, is not being afraid. So I'm really pleased that you said that, because when I was asked to give a speech to a lot of young women, I spent some time trying to understand what leadership is, and specifically what makes you a leader. I realized by preparing for this, in the context specifically of female leaders, that I did not become a leader. I didn't run companies. I didn't find myself in leadership situations because it just happened. I realized that I had been trained for almost all my adult life, since the age of 18, when I joined the military. And what I want to tell you to start this lecture off is extremely important. And if you don't remember anything else, remember this. We are all born to lead. Every one of you can lead. In fact, you were born to lead. We hear the expression, a natural leader. Usually he is a natural leader. He's a strong leader. But actually, we're all leaders. The greatest leadership figures in your life to date, I'm guessing, is probably your mother, or maybe it's your father. It might be a brother or a sister. We are all born to lead. The problem is that for our entire life as a child, and then for many people, their entire life as an employee, they are taught not to lead. They're taught to follow. They are taught and made to follow the rules that somebody else sets. So if you think that today you're not a leader, you're wrong. You were born a leader. It's just maybe over the last 18 or 25 years, I'm not sure how the oldest person here is today in the group listening, you've never really probably been told to lead. More importantly, you've never been educated how to lead, because leadership is a skill. It can be acquired. And that's what I want to give you some insight into today. And by the way, we'll maybe talk a little bit about public speaking, because today with the new technology and the new situation with the coronavirus, I think everyone has come to understand that communications are probably going to be the center of your adult world. You have to be able to communicate. So let's just also discuss that. But there's some good news here as well. And the good news is this: you can learn how to speak. You can learn how to be a public speaker. You can learn how to communicate, because all of us, again, are born not with the ability to speak, but with the desire to communicate. And within a year or two, we start to speak. And then we go to university, we learn how to express ourselves, but often we learn how to express ourselves in writing. We don't learn how to express ourselves verbally. And here's the other thing: only 7% of how you communicate is what you say. How you actually communicate is how you move, and how you say the words, and how you interact with people. So we'll be challenged on that one today, because we're trying to do this over a video conference. But bear that in mind. The beginning of this speech, two pieces of extremely good news. Whatever you think, you are a leader because you were born a leader. And whatever you may think your capacity is now, from the day you were born, you were learning how to communicate. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take those issues a little bit further. Now, we all know the lady on the screen. We all have an opinion about her. But one of the things that you cannot deny is that she has had a significant impact on the way people around the world think about the environment. Now, that young woman isn't the cleverest kid you'll ever meet. She's not the best speaker you'll ever hear. But her ability to lead and her ability to communicate are extraordinary. When I was preparing for this lecture, I wanted to put it in the context of today, of the life that you will lead, not the life I led, not the career I have had. I wanted to put it in the context of what life will be like for you. And I can think of no better quote than something that someone called Ollie Pecker said about 10 years ago. Now, when I was running Magticom, the mobile phone company in Georgia, in 2007, I went to Norway, and I went to the head office of Nokia in Helsinki. And I remember thinking that this was the most amazing company in the world. It had 70% of the mobile phone market. The office was a massive tower block in the middle of Helsinki, built out of wood and stainless steel and glass. When you were in that building, you felt like you were in a company that was leading the world, in this case, leading the world in technology. And within 10 years, that company had failed. It had been bought out by Microsoft, and effectively the brand had been destroyed. And the person who took over as the CEO of that company in 1985, I remember listening to him on TV, and he said, I joined the company in 1980. I've been training for this job for my whole life. I've been training for this job, the CEO, my whole life. And for 25 years, he'd been in the company. And within 2 years, we realized something was wrong. Within 10 years, he destroyed it. What he said was, we didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. Looking back, in my opinion, they would have had more success if they'd taken a 21 or 22 or 23-year-old member of staff, someone like you, and simply put them in charge, because he could not see what was about to happen. And a young 20-year-old would have said something, because she would have probably had a Nokia when she was a baby, but a smartphone when Apple brought them out. So the young perspective was necessary at that time. And more so today than ever before in history, the rate of change is increasing. So the people best placed to lead right now is you guys, because you've grown up with this new technology. You've grown up with the idea that the technology is changing all the time. So it's you guys who can really make a difference. Now, I won't leave the slides up all the time, but I wanted to just make this point right now. It's the young who have the best insight on what is going to happen, the young. So you don't think that because you're young, you're at a disadvantage. It's the opposite. You don't have experience, but you've got the vision. You can see what's happening. You know what's going to happen. So when we look back over all these years, we can see that the rates of change. That picture of the ladies at the telephone exchange was taken on the year I was born. The graphic on the left, I found on the internet yesterday. And the image I'm trying to put in your minds right now is that things are changing. And I'm going to give you 3 things that you need to think about if you're going to be leaders in the 21st century. Just 3 things that I want you to kind of try and remember here. Be prepared. A leader knows where he's going. So be prepared. Do not, let me stop sharing for a minute. So be prepared. Don't look down, look forward. Let me give you some examples of this. A leader has to know what is going to happen. He has to have a direction. You cannot lead if you don't know where you're going. And I want to give you some examples about this from my own life. And I'll try to, as we talk through today, this discussion, I'll try not to just give you great figures in history and tell you that you should follow Napoleon or something. I want to talk about people who've given me some insight, and then things I've seen or things that I've actually done. And this idea about being prepared, of anticipating what's going to happen, we started by saying, well, look, in my industry, when I joined that industry in 1990, mobile phones were the industry to be in, and that's the one I got in. And mainly because I was in that industry, I was successful. I became a CEO. I gathered wealth. I had the opportunity to lead a company with 2,000 people in it. But if I'd been in an industry or I'd been in a country that wasn't going to succeed, I wouldn't have succeeded. So as a leader, you've got to know what's about to happen. You have to be looking forward. You have to be anticipating change, because the person who anticipates is probably going to be the leader. The person who's looking backwards, he might be given the title leader, but he can't lead because he knows what's happened. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So get your eyes up. Do all the things you guys are doing today anyway. Be active on social media. Look at what's happening. Try to get a feel for where these trends are going, where they're moving, and get yourself in the middle of all that. Because leaders are looked for, most of all, when people cannot understand what's happening to them, when people cannot understand what's caused this, when people do not know what to do. That's when the leader steps in. Let's take a concrete example about that, of times when I've actually seen people lead. So my background as I said at the beginning, was I joined the military when I was even younger than you, when I was 18, as an officer in the Royal Navy. And from the time of 18, I was trained how to lead. So I didn't just one day say, I'm the leader. No. I was born with the ability to lead. I didn't do anything about it until I was 18 years old. But from then on, I was taught. So I was taught in multiple situations how to lead. And the first example I had, I think, of true leadership and someone who had an insight was the first time I was in a war. Now, in 1982, before you guys were born, the United Kingdom went to war with Argentina in a place called the Falkland Islands, which was in the South Atlantic. So this is a small group of islands near Antarctica, and the Argentinians invaded them, and it's British territory. So in 1982, as a 22-year-old flying helicopters, I was put on a ship and sent 6,000 miles, so it's 12,000 kilometers or so, to the other side of the world, the south side of the world, to fight a war. Now that's a long way, and it took about 3 weeks to get there. And we were in a big convoy of ships. So it's a bit like the movies. And we've got submarines, and we've got ships, and we've got airplanes, and we've got helicopters, and we've got tanks, and we're moving across the ocean, and we're young. And the Argentinian army and air force, because the Falkland Islands are not far from Argentina, they're all there and they're waiting for us. So as you might imagine, after 3 weeks, you have plenty of time to think, well, what's going to happen, okay? And we're young, we know how to drive a ship, shoot a gun, fly a helicopter, but we don't know what's going to happen. We've never been to war, okay? We've trained for this. We've never actually done it. Like your soldiers now going to Afghanistan. The first time they fly over there, believe me, they are nervous. They are scared, right? They don't really know what's going to happen, okay? And about a day, the evening before, we got within range of the Argentinian Air Force. When we knew that this was going to go, we would start fighting. The captain came on the ship's tannoy, not on a video in those days. He just came on the tannoy, which is a system where you can hear him speak like you can do, like you're listening to me now. And what he said was very important. So we don't know what's going to happen, okay? We need a leader. We need someone to lead us. So the captain comes on the ship in this big aircraft carrier, and everyone's listening. And what he said was, I'll always remember what he said. What he said was, there's no need to be frightened, because when this starts, when the rockets and the missiles and the bullets start, the only thing you will think about is doing your job. The only thing that will be on your mind is making sure that you are doing your job to the best of your ability so that you don't let all your other friends and colleagues down. He spoke about this way, he spoke about what was going to happen, and then he said, we're going to win. He actually used an English expression, which is a little bit rude. He said, we're going to piss it. It means we're going to win. Immediately, from that moment, we were going to win, because the entire crew was ready to fight. We weren't scared, we were ready to fight. Now that's the first example I had of real leadership. And it taught me, and I'm trying to teach you now, that when a leader's needed, you have to be able to give people a direction, even if you do not know what's going to happen and you do not know what that direction is. They will look to you to tell them what's going to happen and to lead. So, number one, always be looking forward. What's going to happen? Make sure you have some idea what you think is going to happen. Then you can communicate that to your team. So this is the first concept, first idea. Look forward, anticipate change. Don't spend all your time studying what happened. Look forward, what's gonna happen. Be the person that can give some insight into that, and be ready to tell people what to do. Okay, be ready to do that, because leaders must lead. I used that when I first came to Georgia in 2004. So again, this is something that was taught. when I came to Georgia in 2004, before some of you were born, no, not born, but I mean a long time ago, some of you were at school. Now, in 2004, Georgia had just had a thing that I think you'll have heard about called the Rose Revolution. Magticom was the biggest mobile phone company. And there was a problem. They had arrested the owners, they'd arrested people in the company. The general director did not know what to do. We were a ship with no captain. They sent for me, and I was in Moscow. I arrived in Georgia on the 28th of February, and on the day after, I went in front of the staff of Magticom, all the senior managers. Now, don't forget, they don't know me, and I don't know them, and I don't know Georgia. I've only been twice, okay? So I didn't know what was going to happen, right? They didn't know me. But what I did know, because I just knew, is that we'd be okay, because that's fundamentally what leaders think. Leaders generally look on the good side, not the bad side. So I stood up, and I didn't speak Georgia. So I didn't say, I said, that was the first thing I said. I just went up in front of all these managers, these senior guys I'd never met in a company I'd only been to twice just to visit for a short time. And I said very confidently, okay. Everything will be okay. And then I told them to come to work, that tomorrow everything was going to be normal again, and we were going to go forward. And that's all it took. That's all it took. Remember, they don't know me. I don't know the company, but I had a vision. I was looking forward. I figured I'll work it out, and I communicated it to them. So that's a concrete example of what you must develop as a leader, the ability to look on the bright side, formulate a plan, oftentimes very quickly, and have the confidence to communicate it, because that's what people want. That's what people want. What they don't want is the idea that nobody knows what's going on, okay? What they want is the idea that somebody does have a vision and then they will follow you. So first rule, look forward, don't look back. First rule, look forward. And always remember, as I'm speaking to you today, you were born to lead. The reason you may not think you're a good leader today is because this might be the first time anyone's ever taught you how to do it, okay? So is everyone following me so far? No one's falling asleep, yeah? Nod your heads like this, yeah? Everyone's good, okay, good. Let's carry on. Rule number 2. Let me go to my magic machine here and put up the screen again, 1 minute. We won't leave the pictures on too long, but let's just go back onto this. So, we said be prepared. Right. Has anybody heard about networks? Anybody know what networking is? Nod your heads, okay? You've heard about networking, right? You are now already in a very privileged network. The kids listening to me today, the young women in this room today, make sure you've got their numbers, make sure you've got their email addresses, make sure you're on Facebook, make sure you're on LinkedIn. Stay in touch with these guys. Everyone listening to me today, that's a network. And I guarantee you that in 10 years' time, if I'm still around to see it, at least one of you will be a CEO, and one of you will have a senior position in government, and about half of you will have been overseas to work. If you don't believe me, that's fine. But I'm telling you that's what's going to happen. So that's a network. You've got a network. So networking is extremely important for a leader. Be connected. Be connected. Okay, spend this time while you're young and at university building your network, because this will be incredibly valuable to you in the future, and it will also help you to shape your vision of what's going to happen, because the people around you, the people you're listening to, are an important source of information. today, everybody's got too much information. Everybody can say the facts speak for themselves, because I can find something on the internet that will tell me the earth is flat. I can find something on the internet that will tell me that this political party is right, and I can find something on the internet that will tell me that that political party is right. If you listen to Mutabari Ahi, you will believe that Georgia is a disastrous place full of criminals and it's falling apart. If you look at another TV station, you'll find a different story. If you go to Georgia and if you live in Georgia, you will know completely, fundamentally, that this is a nice place and it's going to be just great. So everyone has too much information, but people are really good sources of information. People you know, that's a good source of information. Okay, you might be talking to them on the phone, but they're a good source of information. So get connected, guys. And this group of people, let me turn this off and I can speak to you. This group of people that you can see on the screen here, they are a group of college graduates from last year joining Dartmouth College in the United States in a business school called Tusk. I did my master's degree in Warwick University. And that is the joining group from the year before last, I think it was 2019, before the COVID. And they were joining the sort of incoming photograph of the kids going on to the business school. When you look at that picture, you might have sensed something that I sensed, because Tusk Business School came to Georgia and they asked me to speak to them, as I'm speaking to you today. They asked me to speak to them about communications, like modern day communications. And this is about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. So I went into the room to a lecture theater to do a speech like this. And I had some kind of perception in my head that a bunch of people at a business school that costs $100,000 to go to from America, I had this impression that they would somehow be looking like a kind of like a typical American 1950s sort of, they would be wearing sort of American shirts. They would be wearing sort of American jeans. They would be mostly men, mostly white. They would speak very nicely. And when I went in, of course, it looked like that picture. Like, I think no particular racial part was more than 4 people. So, I mean, there might have been 4 white guys. There were certainly 4 Chinese guys. There were 4 guys who looked Indian. There were about 3 guys who looked like they were from to Arab sort of look to them. They were completely mixed up, completely, because that's what America's like now. That's what London's like now. So one of the problems, I think, that we have in Georgia is we're not very diverse, okay? And you need to correct for that right now. You need to try to find as many people as you can from other ethnic backgrounds, from other countries, okay? Because that's important. Your network is important. So keep looking forward, but try to gather a group of people around you that can give you insights into different points of view. As you become a leader, the thing you'll really value, if you're ever going to be any good at it, is having people around you that are not like you, that can look at problems from a different perspective. In case, I very much doubt this because you're all smart kids, but in case anybody doubts this, Georgia is not special, okay? Because Georgia hasn't fully integrated yet with the rest of the world, in the sense that we have a huge sort of transitory population. The only time we really get to feel what's happening in other parts of the world is when people come here on holiday. But the reality is that Georgia's not special. You're not special. Georgians are not special. They're not unique. Everybody's special and everybody's unique. Don't get in your head that for some reason Georgians can't do this or Georgians can do this. Don't get in your head that Africans can do that and Africans can't do that. Don't feel that way, okay? Everyone is unique and everyone is fundamentally the same. You need to try to get to grasp that as soon as possible if you're going to be a leader in the 21st century. As whenever possible, try to make friends, try to get contacts who are from different groups, right? boys and girls, different nationalities, different ages, different sexual orientations, different personalities, different levels of education. Build your network, because nobody knows what's going to happen. But as a leader, you've got to know first, okay? And you can't do that if you're stuck in a bubble. You can't do it, guys. You cannot do it. So build your network. So that's the second sort of lesson. First thing I talked about, look forward. Second thing is have a whole pile of people around you that you know and that you interact with so that you can get some real information from real people. I have worked, and when I say worked, I don't mean I've been on holiday. I worked in America, I've worked in Europe, in Austria, I've worked in the UK, I'm British, okay? I've worked for 3 years in Yemen, in the Middle East. I've worked for 4 years in Sakhalin, in the far east of Russia. I've worked for 2 years in Singapore, about 6 months in Japan. And I've been 15 years here in Georgia. One thing I've learned, okay, everybody's different. Everybody's the same. And what we're talking about today is actually something that everyone has. Everyone's got it if they want to be a leader, but more importantly, perhaps everybody wants it. Everybody wants a leader. Everybody wants someone they can trust. Everybody wants the boss to be good at what she does. So don't get in the mindset that I'm Georgian, it's different. I'm Georgian, I can do it, or I'm Georgian, I can't do it. It's got nothing to do with that, right? Where you're born, it's irrelevant. What you need to do, and you can do it today in this ultra connected world, is build a network to get experience. And whenever you get a chance, right? Whenever you get a chance, get on a plane, right? If you have to, whenever you have a chance, get on a plane, because nothing is more important right now than you get international experience of some kind, okay? You've got to experience new things if you're going to be a leader. Leadership can be taught, but leadership also has to be experienced. So let's move on to the next subject now, but just remember those two things. Well, first thing I ever told you, everyone was born a leader. You just haven't been told how to do it. In fact, you've been told not to do it. You've been told to follow the instructions. Do this, do that, be here, write this, learn that, never fail. That's all you've been taught, yes? That's what you've been taught your whole lives, right? I'm saying, no, right? That's not what leadership's about at all, okay? So let's carry on. Let's have a look at another few things that you need to remember if you want to be a leader. So, put my glasses on again and find my my share screen. Give me a sec. Just go into the presentation. So, where's my next picture? All right, we're now going to get into the, I think the part that, this is the difficult bit about leadership, right? The first two bits are not very complicated, okay? The first two bits, it's pretty obvious, really. Okay, look forward, don't look back, and build a network so that you can get experience and you can understand better how to look forward, and you have a better ability to communicate and interact with people because you just have a wider experience, a bigger group of friends. So nod your head, that all makes sense, yes? Everyone's happy? It all makes sense, yes? Everyone got it? Right. This thing now is where we get into the core of perhaps what makes a good leader or an okay leader. And this is the hardest thing to do. This is the hardest thing to do. That is a picture by a guy called Turner. He's a British artist. And it's a photograph of a sea battle. You know, I'm a naval officer. It's a photograph of a sea battle that took place in 1801 off Copenhagen. And it's a battle. And in the middle of the battle, where the British are fighting the Dutch and the French as usual, there's a guy that I like. And it's one of the few historical figures I'll talk about today, but I've learned from this guy. And he's a naval officer that was called Nelson. Okay, Horatio Nelson. And he was an admiral. And in this particular battle, he was at the front, going through a strait, shooting everybody and getting shot. And it looked like they were going to be destroyed. And in those days, we didn't use text or email. We used flags. Okay, we used to put flags up on the ship like this, and you would read the flag. Okay, and it was like, like B, A, C, that's how it worked. Okay, it was essentially the very first text messaging. So you would put these flags up, and on this painting, the actual flags are there, and you can see them. Now, Nelson had only one eye because he lost it in battle. He lost it in battle. So let me just ask you guys a question. Has anyone heard the expression to turn a blind eye? Has anyone heard that expression? Anyone heard it? I can't see you all at the moment. Has anyone heard the expression turn a blind eye? Anyone want to tell me what it means? Anybody want to tell me what to turn a blind eye means? Anyone's heard of it? No? Yes? No?
I've heard the expression, but I thought that it meant to not pay attention to something, but
yes,
I might be getting.
Well done,
Really?
well done. So, what's your name? I couldn't see.
My name is Taco. I have
Taco.
written my.
All right, Taco, brilliant. All right, brilliant. Okay, so Taco, you're absolutely right. It means not to pay attention to something. So we'll be a bit more interactive after this because I'm on my third point now. Okay, I'm on my third point. Why is that important? So what happens? So the Admiral says to Nelson, he says, come back, come back. Now Nelson is told that this has been sent by his second in command, who says, they're telling us to come back. We're getting blown to pieces. We've got to go back, okay? And Nelson says, give me the telescope. So they give him, this binocular, and he puts it to the blind eye. He puts it to the blind eye. Why? Because he doesn't want to turn back, okay? He doesn't want to turn back. So he deliberately ignores the order. He quite truthfully says, I looked through the telescope and I couldn't see it because he's blind, okay? He turned the blind eye. But he went on to win the battle. Now, why is this important? And guys, just, I can't see you all very well here because I've got my little screen up here, but you've got to listen now, okay? Because this is kind of it. If you can't do this, you'll probably never be a big leader. You can be a leader, you can go and run in a department, but you're probably never going to be a CEO, okay? And you're never going to be the prime minister. You might make minister, you're not going to make the prime minister. And my objective here today is to make absolutely sure that at least one of you kids today, right, goes all the way. Because the problem we've got with young women is that a lot of them get up there, but they don't get the top job, okay? And that's a problem, right? Why? Because in a modern day world, women are more intelligent than men often because the skills that are required in today's economy, like accountancy, programming, and all these things, women can do them just as well as men. It's not like it's a big advantage if you weigh 200 kilograms and you're 2 meters tall. Well, who cares, right? So why are women not going all the way? And partly, I think it's because they're not taught. And partly it's because maybe culturally, they don't get examples of courage. Now, believe me, if you're in the military and you completely ignore what you're being told, you can get in all kinds of trouble, right? It's a bit like university or school, but it's worse. You are supposed to follow orders. But the reality is that if you follow orders all the time, things don't get done, particularly in a world where the rules were designed yesterday in a different system, and all the change in front of us, we need new rules. So who's going to make those changes, right? Well, the women need to make those changes as well as the men. You're the cream of the cream. You're the one that get USAID to sponsor you to do this. So if you can't do it, no one can. Now, let me take my hero and give you a concrete example of what I learned from him. Right. I had another example. Again, going back to war, because that's always a good place to sort of observe leadership in action. when we were in the conflict, fighting the Argentinians, one of the pilots on my ship, a guy called Mortimer, takes the Sea Harrier. He's doing a mission over the island, bombing something, and he gets shot down by a missile called a Roland missile. So he's in a carrier, he's in an airplane called a Harrier, you know, and he gets shot down by a missile, and he gets on a parachute and he falls in the sea. And he falls in the sea like if you're in Batumi and you look across the bay, sometimes you can more or less see, you know, you're looking across. He's basically in the bay. I mean, he's somewhere in the bay. You can get to him in 2 or 3 minutes if you had a boat. We just don't know where he is. And it's off a place called Port Stanley. So it's off the main town, and all the Argentinians are there. Like, the army is there, their air force is there. And we've got to get the pilot. And we can't find him, okay? So everyone's fighting, it's daytime, we're trying to find, can't find him, right? Because he's turned his radio off, because he doesn't want to get captured. So he's sitting in a little tiny boat in the sea and no one can find him. That night, I had nothing to do with this. I was doing something else that day. That night, I'm in bed, I've just gone to bed, I get woken up. And I've just literally gone to bed. And they say, okay, you got to get out of bed, we got to fly in, you know, like, oh, we go. I go into the briefing room, and the senior pilot, we called him, he says, right, they've called off the search for Mortimer. They've called it off because it's dark. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I don't agree with this. We're going to go find him. And I said, well, we can't find his dog. And he turned the radio off. You know, it's impossible. And he said, no, we're going to go find him. All the crews are getting together. We're taking 2 helicopters. And what you're going to do is you're going to go up high, 3,000 feet, 1,000 meters, and you're going to drop all these candles. We call them candles. They're like big flares that lights up the sky. And these are big candles, okay? I mean, like, this is a lot of light. And he said, I'm going to go underneath. I'll find him. I'll see him in the shadow. I'll pick him up. I'll come back. And they're about 100 kilometers from the ship. And it's like the singular most stupid idea I've ever heard in my life, okay? I mean, this was like, I know how we can stop. We'll just run at them and put, I mean, it was stupid. But anyway, you know, I'm in the Navy, so I've got to do what I'm told. So we go on the deck, we take off, and as we're flying out, we get a message. This is really true, okay? This really happens. We get a message, radio message. You know, Bravo's a 3 kilo. You know, where are you going, right? Where are you going? So I'm assuming, because we're out in formation, that my boss has got permission to do this, okay? But he hasn't. We're supposed to be going on a patrol, just a normal search patrol. And he just decides he's not going to go there. He's going to go right back to where they were fighting and pick this guy up. And I realized something's very wrong here, okay? Like, the main ship, the flight control, don't know where we're going. And they're like saying, where are you going? And I'm thinking, like, this is really bad. We're going to be, we can't do this. And he says, we're turning to radio silent. So he simply turned off the radio and told me, told me to turn off the radio. So we go what we call radio silence. So we turn all the electronics off and we go and do it. And of course, I'm still here today. So, you know, we lay all these flares out. The guy sees the candles. He turns on his radio. The other guy goes and picks them up and we all come back. Now, it worked, okay? And again, that was another piece of example where we do not follow the rules. We break the rules. If we'd have got killed or if we hadn't have found this guy, you know, we'd have been in a lot of trouble. Not so much me, but he would have been in an enormous amount of trouble because you can't just go flying around in a war zone wherever you want to go, okay? But it worked and no one ever said anything about it. Now, the final part of the story, and I keep talking about it because it's so important to try to make you understand that everything you've been told about leadership, everything you've been told about what you must do with your lives, start to question it, okay? Start to question following rules and start to question failure, okay? Because if you can't question rules and if you cannot question failure, you cannot be a great leader because you have to be able to do that. Now, go back to Magticom. When I left the military in 1987 and worked at KPMG and then worked in communications, I didn't actually expect to go back to war, okay? He's like, that's not something you normally expect in a normal career. I'm sure you'd agree. Unfortunately, when I went to Yemen, in 1994, there was a civil war. So I think I'm just unlucky in this situation, right? So there was another war. I wasn't fighting it, but I was in the city when the civil war in Yemen started in 1994. When I came to Georgia, of course, I was feeling, running Mictocom, that once we'd got Mictocom back back under control, once we'd established ourselves, 2008, I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I like Mictocom. I'm the CEO. I'm living in Georgia. We've got all these tourists. It's brilliant. Okay, I'm very happy. I'm a very happy guy. Not expecting, of course, that we'd go to war. I don't know how old most of you would have been in 2008, probably still at school, but I'm assuming, again, nod your heads, there was a war. You remember this? Your parents maybe told you, right? So suddenly, unbelievably, we're back into a conflict again. And I took some of these lessons and I used them. In 2008, I don't know what day exactly, it was the Monday, I remember that, the Russians were in Gori, and they decided to come to Tbilisi. You may have read about this in the history books. Can you just nod your heads a little bit if you've heard about this problem? The tanks actually started to come towards Tbilisi. And it was sort of in the evening. I live in Sabertolo, and I was like just, I wasn't doing anything, to be honest. I was just at home, like cooking something. And anyway, I could hear outside the window that all kinds of things were going on. And I realized when I looked out of the window, I live on the 8th floor, that all the cars, there was traffic jams everywhere. Something was wrong. So I called up my deputy and said, well, what's wrong? Why is everyone in the car? And he said, well, we think the Russian tanks are coming to Tbilisi, everyone's leaving. And I said, oh shit, what's happening? Because he's my deputy. What's happening back at Mictocom? And he said, we evacuated an hour ago. So no one told me, right? So it's like, which is another actual interesting part about leadership, is that often when something really bad happens, they don't tell you, okay? So I said, what do you mean they've left? He said, well, the government came and took their monitoring stuff away and told us to close it down. They told all the staff to leave and they told us to evacuate. It's empty, we've closed the building. And I said, well, you can't do that. That's a really bad idea. So I go downstairs, I go into a shop, I find the first person I see, I say, can you, because I had no car, because I had a driver, and he wasn't there. So, can you take me to Mictocom? And the very first man I met, I don't know to this day who he was, he said, yes, he puts me in a car, we go to Mictocom. When I get to Mictocom, nobody's there. Nobody is in the building. So I let myself in, I go to the control room, nobody's in the control room. All you have is all these computers and all these screens and no people, all right? So the system is on automatic, the phone is working, but GeoCell have already failed. So the only communication devices that are working in Georgia is Mictocom, and there's no one in the building. So I called back my deputy and I told him to get 2 engineers and to come back in. And within an hour, the engineers were there, we were working. And within another hour, I got the first phone calls from New York, from the shareholders saying, why are you in Mictocom? Right? This is insured, this is not right. We've been told to evacuate, you can't bring people in. We've got a government minister on the phone. What the hell are you doing? So learning from my experience, what I'm trying to teach you now is, I was in place, I was the CEO, it was my decision to make. So I told him, I'm here, I'm in charge, we're not leaving. Now that's a concrete example of what I'm trying to tell you now, that if you want to be a leader, you're going to have at some point to be courageous, because the reality is that could have got me fired. And it could have also got us into all kinds of trouble with the government, but it didn't. Mictocom never went down. It continued to work, and not because of us, of course, but for other reasons. The Russian tanks never did actually come to Tbilisi. So this is my message, the third message, kind of the final message. You've got to think to yourself, how far am I willing to take this? You've got to be courageous. If you want to be a leader, you need to start thinking now about, how will I break the rules? Will I ever break the rules? Or am I the kind of person that actually wants to work within the rules? That's okay. You can still be a leader. But if you want to be the guy at the top, you've got to be willing to risk it. You've got to be willing to make a decision based on your view, based on the people that are telling you in your network. You've got to be willing to do that. So start thinking about that, okay? Just start thinking about that now. Courage really matters. The things I'm talking about really happened. The only disadvantage you have is that you haven't had the time to have the experiences yet, but they will come. And when they come, take them. Remember, you don't always have to follow the rules. And sometimes you might fail, but it's better to fail and learn how to lead than never to take the risk at all. Anybody know what that is? Let's be a little bit interactive. What's that? Can anyone tell me? It was on TV last night. Can anybody tell me what that is? Come on, guys. What is it? Who is it? Come on, one of you. Be courageous. Who is that?
Can I say?
Yeah, anybody can say. Just shout.
Here is no woman. It's
Yeah.
members of government, and here is no woman.
And who's the guy at the end? That's the Prime Minister, yeah? So next lesson, okay? There's no women there, right? There's no women. So I want to give you now, you've got your 3 rules. I'm not going to teach you anything else now. I'll maybe talk about those rules again. You were born to lead. That's just a fact. There are 3 rules. Look ahead, anticipate change. Build a network so that real people can tell you what to do. You've got advice, you know what's happening because you trust these people, and it's not the same people. It's not all your friends. These are people around you that you can call up. They know what's happening. And third thing, be brave. Okay, be brave. Now, this is a contextual thing. As you get stronger, as you get more experience, as you learn how to take risks, know when not to. There's a book called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And in it, he says, do not attack walled cities. And it reminded me when I was watching TV of this, okay? So if I was a young woman now, looking at this, this was the British, the Georgian Business Association and the Prime Minister yesterday. There's no women, okay? There's no women. I mean, there's no women, okay? And when I look at that, I was thinking, you can't attack that, right? That's too hard to attack straight on. Yep. Everywhere in Georgia, we see places where a group of people have got control. And this isn't political. This would have been the same under any government, right? And this not only in Georgia, this is many, many cases. When you look at it, it's no women, okay? It's all men. I think like 90% of the CEOs in England, 90% of the CEOs in America, they're all men, okay? So this isn't untypical of the world today. It's typical. So I don't want you to just attack everything. I don't want you to be brave. You've got to also think about a strategy. So this isn't a fundamental point. This is just something to put those other points in context. Just because you become a good leader doesn't mean you can just win every time, okay? Take things in context. For you to succeed in Georgia, there will be places where it will be very hard for you to win. Therefore, you need a strategy in which to do that. The organization I'm speaking on behalf of today, okay, EBA Youth. We believed, a group of people, one of who's a woman, right? We believed 4 years ago that something was wrong in Georgia. We couldn't understand why, when you have this relationship with Europe and you have a DCFTA and you can export, why is no one doing this? And also, why in Georgia do so many companies not want to put in place standards? Why don't they want to have labor safety standards? Why don't they want to recruit more women? Why don't they want to follow the rules? You know, why don't they want safe products? Why? And we looked at the business associations, one of which I ran for 4 years, you know, American Chamber of Commerce, and we looked at them and we thought, okay, we can go in and we can change it. You know, we'll change it. We'll go back into AmCham, or we'll go and try and take over the, you know, the Georgian Business Association or something, I don't know. And we'll go and change it. And then we looked at it and we thought, we ain't gonna change that, all right? We ain't gonna change that. This is like Nelson, this is military tactics, okay? Like sometimes you can't fight directly. Don't attack a walled city, okay? That's kind of dumb. You can, however, get your objective in a different way. And the way we formed our objective was not to fight the other associations that didn't want to do it. We just formed a new association. So every time as you develop your careers now, ladies, if you find something that you think, look, I just can't break into this, go around it. If you can't make it in that company, start your own company. If you can't win by attacking directly, attack indirectly. To get to the top, you have to think like this, okay? You can't just be clever. You can't just follow the rules. The reason women are not making it to the top jobs is because no one's telling them this, okay? No one's telling half the men this, it's only some. But everything you're being told about following the rules, don't fail, it's wrong, okay? It's not wrong if you just want to be a normal person, but if you want to be a leader, if you want to get to the top, you can't follow that rule. It's stupid. You're not going to achieve it if you do that. So that's an image to keep in your mind, okay? Yesterday was a big meeting with the government about the economy. Not one single woman was there. How are you going to fix that, right? How are you going to fix that? You don't necessarily have to change that meeting. You have to change where those decisions are made. Okay. I'll wind up now, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion. I'm British. I could not talk to a group of young women about female leadership. Does anybody know who that is? Right, just shout it out. Anyone know that is?
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher.
It's Margaret Thatcher. Okay. Margaret Thatcher came to power the year I joined the Navy. And when she joined the Navy, our parliament was a bit like this picture. So it looked a lot like that. There were no women, okay? So she became the prime minister. Now that's pretty clever, okay? I can't get into the meeting, so I'll take the meeting over, right? Margaret Thatcher. What do I want to say about Margaret Thatcher? What I want to say about Margaret Thatcher is that a really good thing for a leader is when you actually believe in something. Now, if I asked you what you believed in today, you probably couldn't tell me. You would probably say something like, I believe in God, or I believe in Georgia, okay? Or if you're that kind of person, you might say, I believe in rock and roll, all right? I believe in this. You might have someone you like, you might have this, but you probably never really thought about it. But great leaders have an idea that drives them. And in Margaret Thatcher's case, it was personal responsibility. So Margaret Thatcher strongly believed that Europe was becoming too socialist. And she strongly believed that everyone had to take responsibility for themselves. Now, why is that relevant to a leader? It's relevant because you can tell. You can tell. If you want to be a leader, you have to work on what you believe in. You know, who are you? You need to think about this, guys, all right? You need to think about this, right? You know, who are you? You know, what do you actually believe in? I mean, maybe you don't believe in anything. Most people don't, if I'm honest. I mean, they might sort of believe in, you know, yeah, but they don't really have a desire, a goal. They don't really know what they want. They don't know what motivates them. Try to find that, all right? People spend too much time nowadays perhaps looking inside and trying to compete, and a lot of people get depressed and they're not this, but there's nothing wrong with just trying to work out what you actually believe in, what you actually like. You know, what are you actually trying to achieve here? Take a little bit of time and try to work that out. Try to work out what are your strengths. What do you actually think? Because if you do believe in something, it comes out. You know, you don't have to hide it. You don't have to think about it. It kind of comes out. And if you nurture that within yourself, it'll shine out of you. It's much easier to follow someone who stands for something than someone who doesn't. One of the problems in society at the moment is that many of the people who are leaders in all the different countries, in business or in politics or in civil society, they're just professionals. You know, they just happen to have managed to get themselves promoted. They don't believe in anything, all right? They might actually just want salary, but they don't really believe. They might be running these organizations, but they don't believe in them. They don't believe in anything, really. They're just very competent at getting promoted. And that's okay. But if you want to be a really good leader, you probably have to start thinking right now, you're all grown up now, you know, what do you actually believe? What kind of leader do you want to be? Because then you can take these decisions. Then you can take risks because you know who you are, okay? You know, work on yourself, invest in yourself. We spend a lot of our time working for other people. We spend a lot of our time doing what other people want us to do. How often do we really think inside? What do we want to do? If you want to be a leader, start thinking about that and start thinking about that right now. When I was in the Falklands, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister. And during my time there, a ship called HMS Belgrano was sunk. And it was a big warship. And we sank it, right? And about 800 people died. That's a lot of people. And actually, when you're on a ship and you're a sailor, you don't really want to hear about other people. You know, it's your job to sink ships and to shoot down planes, but it's not nice to do it really because they're doing the same job you are, okay? It's not great, okay? But we sank it, and we sank it with a submarine. And it wasn't actually technically in the war zone. It was outside the war zone because we put a limit around where the ships could come, and it wasn't in it. But we sank it anyway because our intelligence was that it was coming in, and if it had got in, it would have been a problem because it was bigger than anything that we had. It was a big battleship. And at the time, it caused a lot of controversy. But I'm still here. It didn't go into the zone. And even as late as 2012, the president of Argentina was trying to declare this as a war crime against Margaret Thatcher. But the evidence now shows that it was coming into attack. So where I'm coming with you on this one is I'm glad she did it, right? I'm glad that she had the inner confidence and the foresight to be able to take a decision like that. Because if she hadn't, I may not be here to give you this lecture today. Now, all the things we've talked about ultimately come down to that sort of a decision, the ability to take a decision under pressure, to believe in yourself, and to do it in the frame of mind that I'm doing the right thing. You know, I'm not tying myself into knots here. I've worked at this, I've studied this, I've practiced this for years and years. I'm the person who needs to take the decision that I'm ready to take it. There are people listening to me right now who will one day be in situations like that. Maybe not sinking ships and things, but possibly, you know, possibly Minister of Defense or Prime Minister of this country, right? It is not impossible that one of the 30 people in your group will go on to very, very high office. It's also probable that many of you will end up as quite senior managers. You can do it. The reason your mothers didn't do it and your grandmothers didn't do it is because no one told them when they were this age to start thinking about it. No one told them that they could do it. No one invited them to the meeting, but no one also told them, you don't have to go to that meeting. Make your own meeting. You don't have to argue with him. Do your own thing. The minute you're successful, the minute you start to lead, one thing is certain. People will criticize you. People will say you shouldn't do that. People will get annoyed. You have to be ready for that. So, finishing here, you were born to lead. You can if you want to. You just have to train yourself up. If you don't want to, that's fine. But if you do, you can. It doesn't matter that you're Georgian. It doesn't matter that you're a girl. It doesn't matter if you're 2 meters tall, or it doesn't even matter if you've got no legs. It doesn't matter, okay? You can teach yourself to do it. But if you're ever going to be any good at it, you're going to need those 3 things. You're going to have to be looking forward, not back. You're going to have a group of people around you that you can trust and understand and at least argue with and know what the heck's going on, because in your lifetime, there'll be so much information, you won't know whether it's day or night. And the final thing is, you probably are going to have to take some risks. You cannot learn if you don't fail, okay? Nobody I've spoken about today has got to where they got by not failing. They all failed, but the failing made them stronger. Right at the beginning, I told you, people have told you all your life, do this, do that, do the other. Go to school, don't fail. Get the exam, don't fail. Don't do this, get the exam. Study there, don't fail. I'm telling you that was a mistake. It was good if you want to be the number 2 accountant in a big company, that'd be fine, right? But if you want to be the boss of that company, if you want to be the prime minister of this country, if you want to go and form an NGO that will actually empower women, let's say, in this country, you have to make decisions and you have to fail. You cannot follow the rules because the rules don't even let you sit at the table. You have to be willing to do that. Please think about that, because there's no reason why you can't do it. And that completes my speech or my lecture. And we can now relax a little bit, or I can, and I can take a few questions. And they also asked me to talk about public speaking. And what I did is I just showed you a little bit of how you should do it. And when it comes to public speaking, just remember one thing. Only 7% is what you say. Everything else is how you say it and how you look. So don't worry about public speaking, right? Forget that. Worry about your leadership and worry about the things I told you, because I bet none of you today has ever really thought about those things. So please do so, okay? Please do so. Questions? And please ask me at least one question, because I've been working here for an hour. Ladies, any questions?
Can I give you a question?
Yeah, just shout them out, okay? Because I does not like a moderator. Just shout them out.
Yeah. Is it my turn or somebody is about to ask?
Yeah, anyone, just ask.
You was talking about the Baltic case while we were in the war.
Yeah.
When the Russian soldiers were coming to build. Well, my question is following. If you were just an ordinary worker, what was the core reason that will keep you at the working place? Not as a CEO. What was the core problem, the core reason as an ordinary worker of the Mexican office that will keep you at the place during such a situation that you were having? I mean, what was the company ideology that you were building for centuries? So maybe you were, it was the reason that you were very convincing.
I understand the question. Okay, I understand the question. Right. The
underline one. You were perceiving the responsibility you were having at the time, at the moment, as a now.
Right. Okay. what we actually did is I spoke to my chief operating officer and said, you know, how, because he was the engineer, you know, how long will it stay up? And his answer was, we don't know, right? If an error system comes up and no one is there to correct it, it will automatically close down. So it's a bit like if you turn on, I don't know what would be a good example of this, because I mean, this is highly complicated stuff. It's not like a laptop. So this is like, yeah, it's almost impossible to describe it. It's like it's like an aeroplane. It's like if the pilot came out of the front of the cockpit and left it on autopilot, theoretically it would go on for a long time. But if anything went wrong, it would fail. So I asked him what would happen. That's the answer. And I said, so we can't leave it. No. This is highly dangerous. It could fail. So what we said was, well, look, I'm not an engineer, okay? He is, but even he was a senior guy, and he can't run all the different things you need. We worked out the minimum number of people to do that would be another 2 people, what we call watch keepers. We need 2 trained engineers to do it. And we looked at the engineers who didn't have families, okay? So who didn't have young children. And we started to ring them up. And as it happened, we only rang up 2 people. And we said to them, look, we know, are you willing? You don't have to come back in, but are you willing to come back in? And they said yes. Now, I didn't ask them why they didn't. I don't think they did it for Maxicom, okay? I mean, in fact, I'm certain they didn't do it for Maxicom, okay? They did it because they were Georgians. And I think because they were communications people, they realized that if people's Maxicom phones stop working, they're gonna panic, right? I mean, like, this is gonna be a bad night. If they see on TV that the attacks might be coming, and then the next thing is the phones don't work, okay? GeoCell already hadn't been working for 2 days. And if Maxicom went down, they would assume that something had happened. So they did it for Georgia, okay? The reason I was giving the example there was more the idea that if I hadn't said that, if I hadn't gone back in, it wouldn't have happened. And the only reason I went back in is because I'd had this experience. And it wasn't because I was somehow different. It was because I was the guy who had the benefit of the training and the experience. So, and that's why I'm teaching you guys now. Look, you're not just suddenly going to be the guy that can take decisions. It won't just happen naturally. You've got to train yourself to do that. And you've got to think about this. You know, you've got to position yourself into those positions. And a lot of young women in particular, they're just never asked to do that. No one's, and you don't have the examples. You see, the other thing for young men, I mean, I don't want to get this into too much of a man-woman thing, because I am a man, obviously. So I don't have your experience of a young female in Georgia, but I'm not stupid. I mean, I can look at the situation, and it's not that far off what it's like in England, if I'm honest, say 20 years ago. You know, who are your models? You know, where are your role models? Who do you look at to say, oh, you know, this woman and that woman and this woman and that woman? When you actually turn on the TV, you're not seeing any women. So young girls are not thinking about it. They don't have the role models. You have to be the role models. You have to be the generation that become the role models. So, but if you're not thinking about it, you know, you're not 12 anymore, right? You're not even 21 probably. Like you're adults now. You're young adults. And now you need to think about it, because these decisions, the ability to take decisions, the ability to lead, is going to start coming very, very quickly. And it's my contention that, and it's a strong contention, that you can teach leadership, okay? I'm not saying everyone can be a great leader, but you can definitely teach it. And the opposite is true. If you don't teach anyone to do it, very, very few people just naturally become a leader. That's like saying, you know, why can this guy fly a plane? Oh, because he was born a pilot. No, he wasn't born a pilot, right? Someone taught him. You know, why is this guy really good in French? Because his mum was French and spoke to him in French when he was born, right? That's why. He wasn't just gifted. People say, oh, he's a gifted linguist. He's a gifted leader. He's a gifted. No. Everyone's more or less gifted, okay? But people don't try. And your generation of young female leaders in Georgia who have the education that you've had, the skills that you've had, I want to instill in you this concept that you can do it, but it won't happen just because you want it to happen. It'll happen because you do things. You seek out these experiences, you seek out the training, and you're not scared to fail. the point of success when it comes to leadership often comes down to very small differences between 2 or 3 people. And those differences are minor. It's a bit like a tennis match, right? The guy who wins is not necessarily even the best tennis player. It's just that there's a very small difference at that point in time, and he maximizes, or she does. But they've all lost matches before they get there. So it's at the point of failure. It's when you fail that you understand your own boundaries. And the great thing about failing is that it increases your capacity. It's not a loss. It's not like something breaks. What it means is that you strengthen your system, your experience, you strengthen it. Failure strengthens it. It doesn't feel very good at the time. It might take you a year to get back, but when you are back, you'll be stronger than the period before you failed. And I'm scared that a lot of young people in Georgia, a lot of women in particular, are not being told this. They're simply being told, don't fail. And ultimately, that means you take the safe decision, you do the safe course, you don't put your hand up into places that you don't know you're going to be able to succeed because you're not used to it. So that's my answer to your question, okay? They came in because they were Georgians, right? But the initiation of all that came because I told them to come back in. And the only reason I told them is because I'd had the experience over 20 years, starting when I was 18 years old, that in certain situations, it's okay to break the rules. And in certain situations, the only person who can really see what to do is the person in the role. It's the person with his hands on the controls in the CEO position. And my job today was to try to make sure a few of you guys at least get into those positions in 10 years' time, but you're not going to do it if you simply don't ever take a risk, okay? Any other questions? Thank you very much. That was good.
Can
Yeah, anybody, just shout out.
I? Sorry.
Okay. I want to thank you, first of all, and I have one question. What's about trust? Because when you're a leader, you need to people trust you, and when you are a woman, it's more difficult to make people trust you. It's problem for me. And what about trust? How important trust is?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Trust. You can't trust anybody. Okay. The idea that you create a team of people that works together, there's no conflict, everyone's in the same frame of mind, that's ridiculous, and it's not even desirable. You can create a functioning system with a group of people, but if you have high performance people, they're very unlikely to not compete with one another. And in this world, you can't really trust anybody. So it is a level. It's a question of degrees. You shouldn't attempt to create a system in which everyone has complete trust. What you can do as a leader is create a situation where there is some trust, where there is some common goal, and there is a reasonable expectation that people will work for one another. Again, the military is the situations where that's most commonly used. The idea that you rely on each other, you'll protect each other, you've got each other's back. As a leader, you should be trying to create that. But it's not possible to create an organization where everyone is fully trusting. What you should try to create is an organization where the level of trust is high. This is not an on and an off situation. This is a question of degree. And the reason I'm being very careful about this is that there's nothing wrong with conflict, okay? Conflict is good in a dynamic environment. If you're running something that's going to run the same way for 20 years, nothing's going to change. A nuclear power station, for example, like the Chernobyl example. You probably do want a group of people who are just going to work together very carefully and not experiment. but that's a very rare example nowadays. Most organizations are in situations of enormous change. And in those situations, you kind of want a little bit of conflict within the organization. You kind of don't want to be everyone completely trusting everybody else, because it then sets up a bit of a tension. There's nothing wrong with having a group that don't fully trust each other. There's nothing wrong with having a group that are actually arguing with each other. There's nothing wrong with conflict, as long as the levels of these things are in balance. So as a leader, don't try to create total harmony in the 21st century, because total harmony was the feeling I got when I went into the Nokia's headquarters in 2007. Everyone was friendly and happy, and the whole company was about to fall apart because no one was saying, look, wake up, this iPhone, look, what about this? No one was doing that because there wasn't enough conflict. So that's a complicated question, trust. Yes, trust is good. Yes, a leader should be building trust within his organization. Definitely the leader should be trustworthy. You've got to be a great demonstration of, yes, you can rely on me and I will not mess you up, right? But the team around you, you can't expect everyone to be completely trustworthy. And a consequence of conflict often is that people are more adaptable to change. So we're kind of in the master's level here. So I hope you can follow most of that. Try to build a trustworthy team, but it's not essential that everyone is fully trustworthy. And if you're having trust issues, that's okay, right? If some people that you're working with, you don't trust them, that's kind of okay. Just try to yourself be a good example to your team members, and particularly if you're in charge, that you are trustworthy. Yeah, you want the boss to be trustworthy, okay? But you can't expect the whole team to be trustworthy. Another question, I think it was you, Maya, who wanted to say something? Nana, was it you?
Yes. I've been trying to improve my leadership skills for a while, so I still have a long way to go. But the thing I struggle the most at the moment is that I have never been given a chance to be in charge of a group, even a small group. So in case of jobs, how can I persuade others and make them think that I am capable of doing things?
Yeah, okay, that you're talking about. Right, I've got it. I mean, this is the dilemma, okay? This is the great dilemma of youth, okay? You are in many ways the best placed people to lead, but you haven't got any experience, right? In a very fast moving environment, the young people, they think faster, they have a better understanding of the technology, they're more adaptable, put them in charge. But of course, it's not that simple because they've never had experience of leading anybody. How do you get that leadership experience? Well, I mean, you're in the right place, aren't you? You know, you've already got yourself somehow into this group today, okay? I'm sure if you talk to Maya and USAID, you will be given, yeah, I mean, I'll mention this to Maya. I'm sure she's either watching or she'll see this. If you guys want some experience of leadership, that would be a great initiative to send back to USA and see if we can all, if they're agree to this, EBA will help set this up. There are exercises, but you do need people. It's not that simple. In terms of getting experience of how to lead people, these things don't really exist in Georgia, as far as I'm aware. But in other countries, we have like scout groups and guide groups, and we have things where young people can get together and have experience of this. So unfortunately, I can't really recommend anything to you right now, but I will take it up with USAID and see if maybe within this group, and EBA would be happy to help you with that. We can set up some exercises and things and tasks where you can work in a group. Sometimes in the universities now, they also try to do this. So let me get back to you, okay? I'll make a note.
Thank you.
I'll make a note. No, it's an absolutely great point. And I mean, we're having a leadership lecture, so you make a great point. How the heck are you supposed to get a chance to practice this? So I'll take this up with Maya. It's Nana Kaji, yeah? Nana Kaji, okay. All right. Guys, anything else? Anybody else for any more questions?
I do have one question, but
Yeah.
there might be a phone ring.
Don't worry about the phones.
On the background. I'm sorry. I was interested about the last part you explained, the desire that we have to understand what we want to do in future, maybe. I'm interested in your personal experience, how clear that voice was in the beginning. Was it telling you to work in telecommunications or be a leader or something?
Yeah, no, communications was luck. I simply went into communications because I've been in the Navy and I went into communications. So that was just luck. I was lucky. But what I did learn is if I hadn't been in communications, I probably wouldn't have been successful, right? If I'd have been a coal miner, like in England, we used to have coal mines. I mean, literally we had these things in my day. So the point I was making to you there is you've got to look ahead. Be very careful. You don't end up in a place that you don't stand a chance, okay? So there are certain industries nowadays you just don't want to join. And the best people to advise you on that is you, because you're young, you can feel this. The main part of your question, though, I think was more about, when did I feel a desire in myself to succeed, if you like, to be a boss? Is that the question? I think that's a very personal thing, but I'm very confident that you would not be here listening to me today if you didn't have it. I very much doubt, I might be wrong, that someone knocked on the door and asked your mum and dad if you could come to this, if you could be sitting here. As I understand it, 120 people applied to be on this group. So the fact is you may as well just take it as obvious. Ashkar Shengak's interesse and problemas. So you've got, I think I don't know. I think it's different for every person. I think some wealthy people, some elite people, they get sort of forced into management positions, but it's quite a small number. I mean, it's a big proportion maybe of the elite in any country are like that, but for everybody else, I think it is a very personal journey. I think you just feel it. I think if you're the kind of person that gets frustrated by the people you're working for, you're probably a natural leader, because 99% of people, literally, yeah, that's all they do. They're born, they go to school, they get a job, and that's it. That they just follow rules and regulations their whole life. About not 1%, let's call it 5% of people, it's not enough, right? They want to be in charge. They feel it. Most people experience leadership as a parent. So we are, as I said, we're all born to lead. We can all do it. Otherwise, it would be a disaster, because every family would be a catastrophe. Okay, and they're not catastrophes. Families often are very powerful structures. It comes from within. When you become a mother, you become a father, you become a leader, or you're an older brother, an older sister. It's in you. Okay, but a lot of people are not told to do it. So therefore, who does it? It's that proportion of people that recognize that I want to do this. And the message I've got for you today is, if you think you want to do this, you already know. There's a very high probability that everyone in this group has that feeling, because otherwise they wouldn't have gone to all the trouble of getting themselves into this group. So just assume that you've got this, right? That you want to do it. And then my message to you today 1,000 times is, you can do it. It's taught, it's learned. It's like French. It's not something you're born with the capacity to learn foreign languages. But if no one teaches it, and if you don't try and learn it, you don't wake up one day speaking French, okay? Or, maybe the Paracop Cartula is it wasn't just there. And leadership's the same, okay? So if you are feeling a little bit of frustration, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of kind of, what if I was doing this? Could I be that person? And you don't have a lot of role models in Georgia, but could I be that person? I'd like to be that person. You can be that person. because you're clearly highly intelligent, right? You already speak another language. You've somehow got yourself, so you've already been playing the game I'm playing. You've already been competing to get yourself into this position so you can do it. Believe me, there's not one single woman here today who can't, I'm not saying you can be the prime minister, but there's not one single woman today that if from today she decides to be a major leader in her industry or in politics or in the NGO world, that she can't do it. I mean, come back in 10 years and tell me, I tried that, I failed. If I do that, right, if I'm still alive, come back and say, I listened to your stupid lecture, David, I tried, and I just didn't have it in me, right? I'm very, very confident that in 10 years' time, if you all come back to me, you'll all say, either I am now a leader in my organization, you know, some of the things you said were useful, or you will come back and say, I didn't try. That's the only two variations. I don't see anything else. I really don't. I'm not concerned that someone will come back and say, I really tried. I really did everything you said, but I just was too stupid. I just wasn't very good. I wasn't a leader. I couldn't do it. Believe me, no one's going to do that, right? No one's going to do it. That you've all got it in you, all of you. It's just no one's ever told you, and no one's ever shown you that the only way you'll ever really do that is by thinking about it, getting some training, and being prepared to accept some conflict, some pain, and break a few rules. And almost certainly, if you try and do what we're talking about today, you're going to fail. And if you do fail, and you land, if you pardon the British expression, if you land up on your ass, right? If you get knocked down, and you sort of think, oh, for Christ, you know, for goodness sake, you know, I would never try to do that. If David hadn't told me, you know, stupid David, you know, look at me now, you know, I did this and then I failed and I feel terrible. You know, call me and tell me. But I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you, yeah, but call me tomorrow, you know, and call me the day after, and call me in a year's time, and you'll go back and say, you know, when I fell over and I got back up, I realized I could get back up, and now I'm stronger. If it doesn't kill you, okay, you're gonna get stronger. It's a fact. If it doesn't kill you, you may have heard this expression, but it's true. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, okay? And while you're young, while you don't, or most of you probably don't have children, you don't have major responsibilities, now's the time to get in the fight, get in the ring, okay? You know, I used to be a boxer, and we use the expression, get in the ring. It means get in the fight, okay? Yeah, you'll get hurt. Yeah, you'll fail. Yeah, people criticize you. People might laugh at you. That's the hardest one, is when people laugh at you. Getting hurt isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem when you try to, you know, be a successful leader is people laugh at you. You know, like people say, oh, you know, that was a stupid idea. You're a fool. You know, you shouldn't do this. You know, you get that pain and you think, well, why do this? But the reality is you have to do this if Georgia is going to succeed, right? 50% of the Georgians, as far as I understand, are female, right? And if the elite females, the clever females, don't try, you know, it's a disaster, right? If in 5 years' time we get another photograph of the prime minister meeting the business leaders and it's still got no women on it, you know, like what? Oh, come on, you know. And if it's not your generation, which generation? It's not the ones ahead of you. It can only be the ones behind you. So if you don't do it, your little sister's going to have to do it. Well, that's not a very good strategy, is it? You know, it's not. You have to try. You really, I don't want to scare you all, but I mean, you do have to try. Look, let me just say it one more time, right? There's nobody listening to me today that does not have the capability, because you were born to do this. You wouldn't be in this room if you didn't at least exhibit some elements of leadership already. You wouldn't be in this virtual room if you weren't smart. So why can't you? Well, there is no reason. The only reason is because you don't want to. And that's okay. You know, I mean, fair enough, right? If you just listen to all this and think, like, no, I don't want to do it, then that's okay. You know, you don't have to do this. But if you do want to do it, believe me, you can. Only thing I can guarantee you is you will fail at something, you know, you will sit on your ass, but you will get there. You really will, right? Just look within yourself, And if you feel it's what you want to do, you know, go for it, right? Because if you don't do it, who is? Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else?
I have one more question.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go for it. Lana.
Well, how important do you perceive to find the philosophy and psychology of nations? So when you were talking about the words that when you say after 2 visits in Georgia that everything will be okay, this is maybe Georgians are driven by emotions. I perceive this was one of the reasons that everything went fine, that we are driven by emotions, and this words, everything will be okay, was magical for us. How do you feel, and how do you perceive this work, adaptivity for being a good leader? If you're a good leader in Georgia, to imagine a part of Georgians, will you be a good leader for Brazilians or for in South Africa with the
Yeah, I understand the question. Is it context related? Is it context related? My observation in life is no. I genuinely think that we have a misunderstanding of national characteristics. I actually think that when you view a whole country, you can say things like the Italians are more emotional than the Germans. Yeah, you can say that. You know, it has a context there. But as an individual and in a small team, it's irrelevant because it's like averaging out everybody's height and saying everyone's got to be exactly 1.65 m. There is no one who's exactly 1.65 m, right? They're all different sizes, right? So I don't think it's a major issue, but it's a very clever question. Your question is, should you adapt your leadership style according to the context? Yes, you should. I think you wouldn't necessarily get away with a speech in Italy that you would get away with as a speech in Germany. However, certain desires are universal and certain leadership characteristics are universal. And I am convinced that a leader has to give a direction and be positive. I think the only speech that someone might say, oh, well, that's not how this worked, would be Churchill's speech before the Battle of Britain, where he basically said we have years and years of toil and pain ahead of us. Like he laid out the problem that to beat Germany was literally going to require enormous sacrifice. But the concept of his speech was, we're going to win. Nowhere in my lexicon, in my experience, have I ever seen a situation where a leader is better if he's negative. In the context of Georgia today, nothing makes me more annoyed, more furious as an investor in Georgia than when Georgian leaders say, don't invest in Georgia, Georgia's not a democracy, Georgia's a disaster, because it's negative. And when that comes from leaders in this country, you know, certain characters who have a voice, I think that is the very worst possible example of leadership. And that's not about Georgia, and that's not about America. That's just in general. Nobody in a problem wants to hear someone in a leadership position make it worse, moan, complain, be pathetic. You know, it's a good word, pathetic. You know, oh, it's so terrible. That is not what leaders do, okay? Your mother does that, right? In the context of when, you know, when she's not in a leadership role. Does your mother say, oh, everything's terrible when the baby's sick? No, she fixes the problem, right? What you want in a leader is that he or she is positive, looks at the problem, and even if he doesn't know how to do it, at least he says, right, let's do this. That's what people gather around. It's not contextual for Georgia. It is emotion, but I think everyone's got an emotion. think you go to Japan, you go to Yemen, you go to Russia, as I have done. I mean, people don't like the Russians, but the Russians, they get into this really well, okay? The Russians are very different to Georgians, but they follow the same kind of leadership traits. Putin says Russia's great, they all follow him, right? Someone stands up and says Georgia's great, all the Georgians follow him. If Boris Johnson says, stands up and says, oh, Britain's great, let's leave the EU, we all followed him, right? Because, I've got a direction. I'm the leader. I'm positive. I can do this. That's what you're looking for. Yeah, and that is really what we're saying, what we're talking about today. It's like, could you be that person? Could you be the person that when the company is facing an enormous problem and no one really knows what to do, you're the person who A, recognizes there's a problem because you've got your head up here, not stuck down there or looking backwards, not complaining all the time about what's happened, but looking for what you could do. You're the person, and instead of just reading everything and saying, oh my God, this is Facebook. No, you're ringing people up or you're texting people that in this big network you've got of people who often say you're wrong. Like there's conflict here. They don't even always agree with you. You don't even like them, but they're part of your network. And then they say, yeah, look, David, you should be doing this. And I think this. And then you get a plan. And then the third one is you're brave. You don't sit there and shut up because everyone's going to say, well, that's a stupid idea. Or, don't do this. Or you're an idiot. You're a joke. No, you get up there and you say, well, look, I want to do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. This is what we should do. That's leadership, right? That's leadership. I'll give you one little joke to sort of finish off on. When I was again in the military, I went on a course, a selection course for a military training course, which was all about guns, right? And because I was in the Navy, I wasn't really very good at those days at guns. And everyone else was in the army, and so all these army guys. And I remember an army officer who was like he was just better than me, okay? He was just better than me. He was bigger than me. I'm not very big. He was bigger than me. He could shoot better than me. He could run faster than me. He looked better than me. He's like this. I remember he laughed at me when I joined. Like you're just a joke. You're just a joke. He literally laughed at me. Some Navy guy. There's no way you're going to do this. And at the end of the course, which was after 2 weeks, and we've been running here and running there and shooting this and shooting that, everyone's exhausted. There's 100 people started the course, and they had to select 10. And they did it in a really nasty way. They put all people. By that stage, about 60 people were left because 40 had either been injured or left. And we're all stood in rows like soldiers do. We're all stood up like this. And they just read out from the front, these 10 people will come forward. And they read out my name, right? And as I was going forward, I realized they didn't call his name, right? They didn't. He failed, right? And I remember at that point thinking, I am never gonna think that I can't do this, that someone else is better. I'm never, because I'd almost convinced myself I was wasting my time. I almost couldn't lead myself, right? Like I almost gave up. So people who can't see a positive outcome probably can never be leaders. It's not Georgia, okay? It's not, believe me, but if any situation like it happened in Mexico, if the CEO had gone in, it doesn't matter what country it was, and then said to the staff, look, I need some of you to come back, they would come back. What they probably weren't capable of is doing it themselves, right? They did need the person in charge, which makes it easier, of course, to say, no, we need to come back. It needs the prime minister, it needs the leader of or even in a smaller way, it needs the head of the department, the organization, the family to say, look, we're going to do this. That's leadership. And you can't be a leader if you don't know, you're not looking ahead, you don't know who to ask, when you need some stuff, and you're not willing to take a risk. If you're not willing to take a risk, that's okay, but you're not a leader. All right? You're not a leader. Have a positive attitude. Believe in yourself. Do the things I've been saying to you because you were born a leader. The only doubt you're having is because no one's ever trained you. If you follow this up, if you allow yourself to believe that you can do it, if you're willing to get laughed at, to fall on your ass, to pick yourself up, and you seek out opportunities and you seek out training, I guarantee you, within 20 years, 10 years maybe, 1, 2, 5 of the girls who are listening to me today, They'll be in the newspapers, in the magazines, on the TV, not just in Georgia, but in other places in Europe. Believe me, this is an elitist group, right? Just believe in yourself. Let's end it there, okay? Thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I really hope you remember a couple of the things. And hopefully I'll see you again because
Thank
we're part of this
you.
group. Yeah. So, Kargari
Thank you very much. And
Thank
it's
Thank
for
you.